Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm over here vibe coding y'all while the intro's playing. Hey, chat, what is up? Welcome to the stream. It's Thursday, right? It's Thursday. to check my watch. How are y'all doing? It's good to see everyone. We got a great stream for y'all today because the Gemini folks are here, or one of them is here. Our other special guest not able to join us today, but we do have Paige Bailey from the Gemini team. Hey, Paige.
Yep, greetings. I am so glad to see both of you, and also very, very excited to test out Copilot with the latest Gemini models. Y'all have been able to set me up with the paid tier, which I hear has a couple of awesome new features. And so I'm really jazzed to see how the Gemini models perform in this, and also to share some of the stuff that we've been working on as well for the software development process.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. So we've got Paige, we've got Harald from the VS Code team joining us on the stream. What's up, Harald?
Hey, friends. Yeah, it's exciting.
How's it going?
Love to see the demos. That Paige always has the best.
Paige does have good demos. So Paige, let me just ask you real quick. We're talking about Gemini here because we made this announcement, maybe, was it 2 weeks ago or
Yeah.
Things move so fast.
Yeah.
I feel like in AI land, 1 week is like an eternity. Nothing is the same. Everything has changed. So what did we announce? Just a recap for everybody.
Yeah, we announced Gemini 2.5 in agent mode within Copilot. And y'all gave me kind of like a sneak awareness that this was going to get released. Really, really excited to see it kind of supported within Copilot. And the models themselves are relatively new. So y'all were able to sprint quickly to get them incorporated.
That is right. I remember, and I'm just looking at my picker now. I'm seeing 2.0 Flash and 2.5 Pro. So tell us more for those who are kind of new to Gemini. There's so many models out there. Kind of give us like, what's the elevator pitch here?
Yeah, so maybe it would be helpful. Let me go ahead and share real quick. I can pop over to AI Studio and kind of pull up the differences between the different models. So let me find a good browser tab to incorporate. So 2.0 is kind of our previous iteration of the Gemini models. I'm not going to share VS Code just yet, but I am going to share one of my Chrome browser tabs. Hopefully folks can see. But 2.5 Flash is kind of the latest model. You can see it here off to the right. And 2.5 Pro is our most powerful model yet. It's multimodal, which means that it can understand video, images, text, audio, code, full code bases all at once. But these models are also pretty capable in the sense that they can output multiple modalities. So not just text, not just code, but they can also output images, they can edit images, and they can also output audio, which is pretty rad. So the latest kind of in our family of models, like if I select Gemini 2.0 image generation, and then just add one of the images that we have in our sample media, you can say things like, please change the color of this flamingo to be blue instead of pink. You can hit run. And then Gemini is capable of changing the image while still preserving a lot of the component parts of the image just via natural language. So you can see like this little artifact with the water droplet hanging from the beak of the flamingo. and that's preserved. That's preserved in the second image. And you can also kind of see the code that is required in order to accomplish these tasks if you hit the Get Code button. So that's the model that's selected, and then also the kind of file handling to get the image uploaded. So in addition to being able to output images, edit images, we also have a streaming feature where you can use the Gemini 2 series of models in different voices you select in different languages as well. So English, German, French, Arabic, whatever you would prefer, to kind of describe what they see on the screen. So as an example, if I go and show kind of like share my screen for a given code base. So I'm going to share for a Chrome tab that I have open currently. Someone's working on a VS Code live share, just basic. Hey, Gemini, could you please help me understand what you see on the screen?
Okay, based on what I see, you're looking at the GitHub repository for the Gemini live share versus code extension. Is there something specific about it that you can explain further?
Yeah, explain to me the component parts of a VS Code extension.
Certainly. VS Code extensions generally consist of a manifest file, which is typically named package.json, which contains metadata about the extension, such as its name, version, description, and entry point. There's also the code which implements the extension's functionality, which is usually written in TypeScript or JavaScript. Additionally, extensions can include things like configuration
That's
settings.
really cool, Gemini. Could you please tell me what you see on the screen now, the code, and tell me what it does?
I see JavaScript code that appears to be testing the Gemini live share versus code extension. It defines an asynchronous function test extension that starts a manual test, tests basic commands, starts a Gemini session, waits for the session to establish, and then checks the versus code UI for notifications or inline completion.
Could you
want me-
please say that again, but say it like a pirate, and also say VS Code instead of versus code?
Hi, matey. Shiver me timbers, this here be JavaScript code for testing the Gemini live share versus code extension. It defines an asynchronous function test extension that starts a manual test, tests basic commands, starts a Gemini session, waits for the session to establish, and then see.
Awesome. Thank you, Gemini.
You're welcome. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask.
Cool. And so one of the cool things is that with live share mode, you can incorporate code execution, you can incorporate grounding with Google search for up-to-date information, and you can also change the system instructions. So if you did want to coerce the model into saying VS Code instead of versus code, you would be able to do that via system instructions. So those
versus code is going to be the meme
Versus-
now, I think, coming off of this stream.
Yeah. But it is really nifty to see kind of the things that the models are able to do now. And again, just kind of by making you can change kind of the language as well if you would like to have the output code in multiple languages, but you can do a lot just by kind of experimenting in the AI Studio UI, and then asking to export the code.
So
I really want this feature to be incorporated into Copilot, by the way, like to just click a button and to be able to have a chat about a code base.
That's sweet. We got to get that feature request in, Harald. We'll get that on the list. So when it comes to code, Paige, like what's the difference between Flash and Pro for me as a developer using it in GitHub Copilot?
Yeah, so for 2.5 Flash and 2.5 Pro, they've been kind of climbing the leaderboards, both LM Arena as well as the Aider Polyglot leaderboards. So if I pull up, I usually hate showing slides, but I think it might be interesting to just kind of see at least a couple for showing the kind of changes in some of the leaderboards. So let me pull up a couple of slides now to share. I'm not sure if y'all have experimented with the 2.5 series as well. But like as an example, they've been topping kind of the Ella Marina, including things like code. Hopefully folks can see my screen. So Gemini 2.5 Pro and 2.5 Flash kind of at the top. For the Aider Polyglot leaderboard, which is kind of gauging code quality and the ability to do things like edit code and kind of incorporate some of these software engineering tasks. The Gemini 2.5 Pro series has been performing really well, and 2.5 Flash you can think of as just as kind of a slightly less powerful and much faster variant of Pro. And then they've also been kind of creating this Pareto curve of cost versus quality. So you can kind of do really, really interesting things without necessarily breaking your budget with the models. Another quite interesting thing about the Gemini models as well is that with 2.5 Pro, I'm going to turn on code execution because I think it's pretty cool. You can do things like say, please, create a cluster plot of the iris dataset from scikit-learn, and also share basic stats about the dataset, and hit run. You can kind of see this mysterious thinking box get created with the 2.5 Pro and the 2.5 Flash series of models that kind of breaks down all of the steps that you would need to do in order to accomplish the task. It's kind of like building a plan behind the scenes for accomplishing the different component parts of whatever you ask the model to do. And so after you get out of this thinking box, you can see the actual output. So it creates the code. With code execution, it can execute the code in a sandboxed environment. And if it runs into any errors, it can recursively fix it. And then you can also see the executable code to generate the plots. There's also with Flash, so if you don't want the model to think, so if you want to kind of have it think on its feet without taking time to kind of go through the process, you can also turn off thinking mode. So with Flash, you can either think or not, or you could also kind of coerce the model to think harder. So you can make it think extra hard or make it think not at all. To kind of give it a thinking budget of how much time it can spend on planning for each question that you ask.
Now, when we're in VS Code here, Paige, what do you see? Like in the model picker, what I see is 2.5. So I see 2.5 Pro in agent mode. Actually, can you pull up your VS Code screen? Did we get, Harold, were we able to get Paige?
Let's see. So I see Copilot. I'm going to open it up again, and then in the picker,
There we go. Yeah, you got them now.
Yeah. So I see the Copilot models, the other models with bring your own key, and then so if I select 2.5 Pro preview, you can add context. So if you wanted to add a whole folder, or if you wanted to just add a specific file, so I'm going to add a screenshot. You could say something like, please recommend a better name for this file based on its contents, and rename the file. And I might need to give it a file path or something in order to use it.
And make sure you go into agent mode as well.
Oh,
right now
yes.
you didn't edit.
Yep. So agent, and then changing the chat mode will end your current session. Cool. And then we
I
can
just up arrow though, and I think it'll bring it right back. Your same prompt. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that. That's like bash commands in a terminal.
Yeah, and also Control L chat. I don't know if you know this, but like Control L starts a new chat session. Like in your terminal, it clears the.
Yeah. And so I'm not sure if y'all can see it. I'll try to make the screen a little bit bigger, but it was able to recommend a better name for the screenshot itself. So instead of being called this like ambiguous screenshot name with a date and a timestamp, it's now Google AI Studio merge sort Python, and it also gives me a command to run to kind of rename and move the screenshot in the same directory. And it's saying the file path doesn't exist at the correct location, and so just because we weren't operating in the correct folder, it wasn't able to do it. But it was able to understand the image and recommend a better file name.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that we had vision support for 2.5 Pro in Agent Mode, Harald. Is that new?
Yeah, I think it came only a few hours after we released it. The team quickly followed up because we've been enabling vision for more and more models. So I think all of the models that support vision have it now.
Yeah. And it's
really
amazing.
So if the model supports vision, then you can pass a photo to it, and you could do that also by just Paige, if you go to now, like I've never actually used this feature, but if you go to here, you can screenshot the window. So if you have a code, like a file open, you can just screenshot, it'll just add it directly to the chat, which is kind of cool.
Oh, sweet. So if I was going to pull up like a script.js, and then like I also love that it automatically adds this file to the context. So if I just incorporate it, but if I wanted to add a screenshot of the window, that's pretty cool too. So just how would I change the gravity in this code example, or since we're in agent mode, change the gravity in this code example to not be Earth gravity, which is the acceleration due to gravity right here. So the 9.81 Earth's acceleration due to gravity, but Jupiter's, and we'll see if it gets it right.
I think what you want to do is you hit that microphone button.
Oh,
I always keep seeing people like talking about their problem is like, just hit Command I on a Mac.
Amazing. And so it was able to change the gravity. I wonder if we go to look at Jupiter acceleration due to gravity, and check, it is. Let me stop sharing my screen real quick and then present another browser tab. But Copilot did select the correct kind of value from the gravity table. So it is around like 24.79, 24.
What did Gemini give you?
24.79. So the which is like within a margin of error. So like
okay, so it's somewhere in that window.
Yeah.
So okay, so in Copilot, we've got Flash and we've got Pro.
Yep.
Do you have guidance for people on like when to use which model and where? That's the question I hear the most often. And even I have this question too. It's like, what model should I be using exactly? Are they all the same?
You are not alone. Like, I think the challenge is that people need to be balancing between kind of cost versus the quality that they want to see from the model. And I always recommend to folks, if you're testing out a new kind of feature, if you want to see if the model is actually good for your use case, if you have an idea in your head and you want to get it out, always start with kind of the most powerful model at your disposal. Start with the 2.5 Pro and see if it can do it. And if it can, then toggle to and see if you can do it with 2.5 Flash. Because the costs are lower, the model is faster, especially if you turn off thinking mode or turn down thinking mode. And especially for these more agentic tasks, you can get the responses back much more quickly than you would with a 2.5 Pro series of model.
So,
but they're still pretty fast.
Right. So I guess that's my question, because Harald, this is a good question for you. One of the things that people love about Copilot is that the cost is invisible to the user, right? So you're paying for individual. I don't even know, what is Copilot Pro for individuals, Harald?
Oh yes, there are questions. What is the latest? So it is updates coming, but the latest is, oh my God. There's a free tier
There's the
Right.
free tier, yeah. But point being that like it's 10. Is it $10? It's still $10. So
Yeah,
right. So
$10.
cost, if you're using Copilot, cost is not a concern, but the rate limits are a concern, right?
Yes.
Which people have been hitting with Claude in the past. And Harald, I don't know if this is just a general question, if we like rate limit people based on cost of different models. In other words, like, should the developer be concerned about cost or rate limits here, or should they just use 2.5 Pro all the time?
Gotcha.
So actually, there's an upcoming, which is probably its own live stream we should do on the new pricing. But so the prices remain the same, but putting some specific counts in place for how many premium requests you can use. Actually, different models count differently depending on how much capacity they require on our side. Things like Flash, I have to look it up actually, but depending on like how expensive the model is, like lots of reasoning, lots of thinking will be more expensive. And then you have really efficient models like 2.5 Pro, and actually GPT 4.1 is also now getting there, where it will cost much less on your side. The rate limiting some people see, it's also there's a service protection, just making sure the token consumption doesn't explode through the roof. So there's some just for service quality rate limiting we also do, but that's the new kind of premium pricing, and then different models costing only a fraction of a premium request, depending on like the
right, because these models are priced very, very differently, right? Paige, because one of the things I've seen is that Gemini seems to be very cost effective from a consumer perspective compared to some other comparable models.
Like if you look at it, I pulled up artificialanalysis.ai, which is one of my favorite kind of websites for benchmarking model quality and being able to compare and contrast some of the different component parts of models. So this intelligence graph is kind of like a composite of many different evals. So you can see kind of the model intelligence versus speed. So the more output tokens, the better. So you can see 2.5 Flash. I believe this is with the thinking mode turned on, so it still incorporates reasoning. And then you can also scroll down and see kind of you can see kind of the compare contrast between things like intelligence versus price. So you want to be like as close to the left-hand most side as you can be here. So Gemini 2.5 Pro doing pretty well as 2.5 Flash. And then
there's some, I see DeepSeek's on there, Grok 03.
Yeah, and
there's just so many of them now.
Exactly. And then intelligence versus output speed. So the green, again, like the green quadrant is the one that you want to be in. So it's been really, really interesting as well to see the difference in price comparisons, especially when you take into account that some of these models can only understand text or can only understand code. They can't get in the multimodal information.
So I have two questions here. The first one, Harald, is for you, which is that, and somebody was asking about this, but so there's one of the selling points for Gemini is the large context window. And do you get, Harald, the same context window inside of VS Code when using Copilot, that 1 million tokens? How does that work when using it in Copilot?
Yeah, so that's always one of these levers we have to make sure we stay within capacity. So we've been growing over the past months just constantly. So getting more and more GPUs in, and then the levers we have is either pulling up the rate limiting or kind of growing that context window or shrinking it depending on what we need. Right now, I think on Insiders is 128K for every model. So we're not utilizing that full context window. If you go through GitHub Models or bring your own key, you can use it fully. But I think that's where as we go towards premium, and we're kind of context windows are ever expanding. The problem is like people believe or want larger context window, but they also want a snappy experience.
Right, you can't have both. There's a trade-off
conflict there. And agent well, it's really slow, because it just looked at everything in the code base and it found a lot of relevant code. And then you keep the conversation going for half an hour, And then it accumulates context window. So I think it's really about that smart usage of like going beyond when we need it and staying within a smaller, fast context window. And somewhat you're in control as a user by opening a new chat when you start a new task and not reusing the same conversation. So there's a lot that you can also do.
I was just going to say what I would love to see is something that's like an intelligent picker that helps you understand like these are the files that you should be incorporating into the context in order to kind of solve the task that you're trying to solve. Like, you know, if you want to change, like as an example, the settings in your VS Code extension, or if you want to add some sort of functionality or a new button, like you don't have to edit every single file, and you might not need to see every single file. But being able to intelligently pick the ones that you would need to change would be a really cool thing for a reasoning model to help with.
Yeah, there's actually two. I guess so. We had part of it actually in edits. People struggle with that. Like it's very explicit. So edits, there's like ask, edits, and agent. And edits is really good at targeted big multi-file tasks. But to do that right, the best way is you bring in all the files you want to work on, right? So you have to know like, oh, I need to edit into CSS and HTML, and then the JavaScript on that side. And we actually had that, and because we're refactoring the UX, we lost part of that, but we had those suggested files based on Git commits. So it was very deterministic. Basically, like people who edited this file also edited this file, kind of recommendation system. But if you use agent mode, right, that's what you get, right? Agent mode will go out based on this task and will look at your code base and will find the right files and then add them to it. Or you add it like the primary file, and then we'll still figure out, oh, there's like a CSS file I'm also missing. So it does a bunch of that.
Yeah, I remember the Gitlins extension. So Eric Amodio, where you could see the visuals of, you know, these are the kind of files that were most recently edited. Like these are the people who are most commonly editing this specific file. Like I think having those kinds of visualizations as well, coupled with the kind of Copilot experience of selecting the correct files, would be really cool for people to see and to build confidence of like, all right, well, when other people have added features that are similar to this, they have also edited these same files. Also, whoever has
a lot of knowledge, right? Yeah, because then I think to add just to point like this idea of RAG right now, where if you just basically look at the code base with a semantic understanding, but there's so much more underneath, from Git commits to blames to PR comments, I think that we want to pull up through, because like it is all in GitHub. So just need to pull it in at the right time to understand, like, I'm working on this feature, how should I do it? And then pulling in that mind map that's already in the code base that's just underneath the code, right? You don't even know from the code, but there's so much more to pull in eventually. And that's, I think, where these large context models can really help, of like, here's my code base, here's my Git commits, here's my PRs, here's my Slack conversation, right? To just and then pull out the right bits.
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of there's a product that was just recently released at Google, or released a while ago, I suppose, called Notebook LM, where you can give kind of a GitHub repository and have a podcast generated about it. I would love to see something that's kind of like the updates for a repository, the release notes, except in podcast form. So like these are the changes that have been made. And then also if you have a library that's dependent on the underlying framework, like these are the things that perhaps you should consider updating in your own repo based on the new features in the repo that you're dependent on.
Yeah, maybe I can show off the GitHub MCP server that does part of that already, because it has a context, so you can pull in.
Ooh, that's very.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Do I have that one? Let's see here. Let me see if I have. Actually, I should just look at it in tools.
Yeah.
That would be easier, wouldn't it?
You can show your demo, and I'll see if I can.
Yeah, I do. It's here. So so while I was building a game this morning with Gemini in agent mode, just like and it actually ideated this, right? It's like, why don't you build Wordle but try to guess the hex color? And I'm like, man, I can't guess hex colors. But so I'd started off doing that, But I was just gonna say, as like, I agree with you, Paige. Like the having it like intelligently collect context is something that we're just constantly working on. And so agent mode will do that, right? In this case, we only have 3 files here. So if we asked it to go do something, one of the first things it'll do is search the code, do a search of the code base. But in like edit mode, there is this code base you can use, which is an agentic search. And so if you're in ask or edit, you can use code base and then ask for whatever. In this case, we could say, I don't know, add the ability to submit a guess. And then again, this is a very small project. It's got 3 files, but if we were in a much larger project, it will go through and search, and then it will look at this. I think, Harald, like, I'm not sure exactly how agentic codebase works, but it tries its best to get the context for you based on what you asked for and based on what's in your project.
Yeah, actually, this one is now, because of agentic, and that's a new setting. Codebase will actually, initially what it didn't pass was semantic retrieval. Just here's keywords, and then semantics means it will find alternative words as well in the code base. So I think it usually means, like, if your code is well documented and really describes what it does, it's really good at finding stuff. But also just it will like find the right words and occurrences. But with agentic code base now, in this case, it's a very small code base, so it doesn't need to be too agentic. But it will actually look at the first result, see, did I find the right files? Is there a file I need more of? And then follow on references and do some more steps. Similar how you would do it, right? You would do some searches and like, oh, this is like the right part of the code, and then do another search to find like the full picture. And that's how agentic code base does it as well now. And that's how it acts more like agent mode, but in a very lightweight way of I just need to find the right files, and then it keeps going with the kind of more simplistic editing.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you, Paige, was so let's talk about the GitHub MCP server. So for MCP servers, maybe we should just do like a quick recap. Like, how would you explain MCP? Like I'm 5. Because it's complicated. It's hard to keep up with. What exactly is it?
So MCP servers are really interesting in the sense that they give models the ability to interact with APIs in a very structured way. So they're a protocol that was created. It's an open standard by the great team over at Anthropic. Since then, it's kind of taken off like gangbusters. So you can have MCP servers for different tools that you want your model to be able to interact with. If you look online, you'll probably see marketplaces for tools, everything from GitHub, which you've already mentioned, to things like Blender, things like PayPal or Stripe for payments, all sorts of stuff. And it just gives your models the ability to interact in a much more reliable way with some of these tools that you might want to incorporate into your agent-like processes. We've also just recently released A2A, which is a protocol for interactions between agents, which tries to keep, like this concept of an agent as an API that other agents can interact with. So MCP is for agents to interact with tools. A2A is for agents to interact with each other in a structured and much more reliable way. And Gemini does work with MCP servers. One of my colleagues, Philip Schmidt, who just recently came from the Hugging Face team to work with us over at DeepMind, has a really great tutorial for MCP servers plus Gemini. So I will add it in the chat, and hopefully we can share it with folks if they're curious about MCP servers and how to use them in their projects.
So I'm curious here. I'm going to ask Gemini. So in this case, we have an MCP server here, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, we can see that here. The GitHub MCP server is right here. And I added that by doing add server, MCP add server, right? And then you can come through and add your MCP servers here, however you decide to MCP, right? Docker, NPM, or SSE. So in this case, I'm going to ask Gemini to search GitHub for Wordle clones and tell me what framework and language they're written in. So theoretically here, it should do the tool calling, right? And it does. Okay. So it's calling the GitHub MCP server.
You can open up.
Yeah, let's look at this here. Wordle clone is what it's going to query. Okay, interesting.
And you could change it. So you see the hover, that's something.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Cool. It's actually using the JSON schema and
I
it does.
I love
validation.
that. Yeah, it's also really interesting when you couple these MCP server experiences with the model's innate reasoning capabilities. One of my favorite MCP servers to use with models is Spotify, because you can ask these really nebulous questions, like, please, build a playlist around that feels similar to that song on Hackers when the guy's flying in the airplane at the very beginning. And it'll be able to both understand what song that was, as well as to add similar songs to a playlist based on that vibe. So
That's very cool. Yeah,
yeah.
I think my token is expired.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
because
you see the red exclamation mark over there. That means the server.
Yeah, I saw
or the
that.
Google.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really like the thing that we all need to be mindful of when interacting with MCP servers is the authentication component. Like, I think there's a whole new wave of companies that needs to be built around kind of compliance, authentication, security, especially as agents begin interacting with each other in things that involve money and involve like sensitive data.
Yeah, so let's handle that. Actually, we can handle that right now. So if we go into our MCP server here, which is down here, so there's my access token. So I'm going to clear this.
Mhm.
And this is something that the VS Code does, where we have this idea of inputs, which are down here, and we encrypt this stuff at rest. So let's start this, and it should ask me for my personal access token, which I'll paste in again. Masked and then encrypted, and now it's stored here, and we should be able to start this thing. Oh, what's the problem? Oh, you know what? I think Docker's not running. It wasn't the key, it was the issue, but it was a good excuse, chat, to show off the encryption.
Look at these logs; they're beautiful. Yeah, just having
look at that
MCP logs. Right? There you go.
Yeah.
I love. I honestly have to say, I love model assisted debugging. Like, if you think back, like, all of y'all remember back in the before times, like, I feel like a crusty old sysadmin a little bit, in the sense that I remember when we were all writing our own code by hand and like attempting to debug through the most esoteric error messages that you could ever imagine. And
so how do you do that, Paige? Are you like just pasting errors back into Gemini wholesale? Do you tweak what do you do there?
So often, like, just with Gemini multimodal live mode, you can say like, hey, I have this wonky UI bug. Could you please help me figure out what's going wrong? And if you show it the code and if you show it the behavior that you're experiencing, it can make recommendations on how to fix it. And also for Colab, we've introduced a feature called Copilot Data Science, or not Copilot, but Colab Data Science Agent, which gives you the ability to have Gemini write and run cells recursively, and to also fix itself if it encounters an error. So if Gemini like writes some code, runs it, and it hits an error, it will use the error in the original code to fix itself and then run again. So it's giving it like a sandboxed environment where it can kind of recursively fix the code for you, as opposed to you having to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, there's such great debugging and error handling capabilities of models, especially with stack traces. Like, even after all this time, looking at stack traces is such a pain. In this case, it's calling the MCP server over and over again. I'm not sure why. I just always see what it does here. But like, just feeding a stack trace back in and be like, this is happening, can you tell me why? And then it's usually pretty good at that. Okay, so what are they using? React, Svelte, Vue, Wordle? Oh, that must be a Wordle clone, Svelte Wordle. So building Wordle clones is a thing. And then
remember
other
the olden days
languages
when everything was a to-do MVC? A hot moment for Wordle.
Can it do this? What if I say, can you modify my code to match the most popular? I mean, this is so vague. To match the framework and language of the most popular clone? I don't even know if it can do this.
Let's see. So we added a new context element, which allows you to pull in context from other repos. So usually code-based context just works on your repo. So you could do a hash GitHub repo to force it. That's how the tool is called. If you do add context, you can see it in tools. Yeah, so try WebDev simplified word clone. What is it using? It's using, just basic.
It already picks the one it already matched.
Yeah.
Were you perhaps interested in adopting the specific feature styling or code structure of a particular clone, or maybe refactoring user framework like React used by other projects?
Cool.
Okay. It's pretty good. Like, as a human being, though, this is kind of how you might respond to this, right? You wouldn't just go out and do it. You'd be like, well, here's what you've got, and here's a popular one that matches. Do you want to do something else?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty good reasoning.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how how more new models are better at clarifying. I think for 2 years since we built chat, we've been trying to get models to pause and ask, right? Because I have an idea. Like, no, you get the wrong idea. And
don't continue.
And now, finally, I think through the right training, the models are now at a point where I don't have all the facts. Let me get back to user, which is great for if you are into well-structured agentic flows and want to stay in control. But I think if you just want to vibe something of here's a general idea, build me a Wordle game, and don't ask anything. I just want to see it, right? And that's the vibe coding floor where you don't want it to pause. Otherwise, you just say yes, keep going, yes, keep going. So
there's somebody had dummied up a screenshot of VS Code with a slider in it on Twitter, which I thought was interesting, where you could slide it all the way to the right, which is just do the thing, don't ask. Versus all the way to the left, which is always ask. But at some point, there's also agent mode and there's edit mode, and edit mode kind of just is designed for the ask or stop. Just do one thing and then stop, and then I'll do the next thing, right? Whereas agent mode, when I'm in agent mode, I guess I kind of assume that I want it to just kind of do everything it can do. But I do agree with you, Harald, that at times it just kind of goes off the rails and you're like, oh, we were 50% of the way there. Now I got to roll the whole thing back.
I agree. I really love the idea of having an agent mode, but that kind of checks in anytime it wants to make a change for something that kind of similar to what we just saw. Hey, here's the JSON blob. Does this look right to you, or do you want to modify it? I like having that level of control and that level of visibility, just as if if you had an intern, you would ask them to kind of periodically check in to make sure that they were heading in the right direction.
Right. I think what I see people not do is, as Chris Pittman pointed out in the comments, is that there is a pause button, right? It's underneath the chat, your send mode goes into kind of generating mode. And then at any point, if it goes off, you can go back, and those buttons in the top are really fine-grained to revert any changes. So even if people are oh no, agent mode did something wrong, no, just go back. It's fine. You can go back to something that worked, I think. But also people figure out that you want to git commit and git stash in between, so that there's other ways to recover that make for nice workflows. But I think that's an interesting point, that sense of security, to get to working state and then continue from there, is really important for agent mode flows.
Yeah.
You know what? This is the model equivalent of system.threading.sleep. I don't know if y'all ever did that in code, when you need to introduce delay for testing or whatever. I guess this is the model equivalent of that. I wonder if it would actually wait a full minute here. I don't actually know what the model would do with this.
If you give it the MCP tool for get to time, you might get it.
It would actually do that. All right, I want to get to some of the chat here, because chat's been very lively, and just make sure. Yeah, I keep my finger on the pause button. That's a pro tip. Pause button there. Let's see here. We talked about this. How do we make sure that the agent fully understands large, complex code bases? Unfortunately, this is only possible with a large context window. I think this is kind of what we were talking about. I think the answer to this is it's complicated. Yes, ideally, you would pass in every single last token from your project, and it would go into the model. And then the model would have all the context that it needs. But there's a trade-off there between the speed and the size of your project, right? And so the way that we handle this in VS Code, at least, is that we index your project. If it's in GitHub, it's indexed with GitHub's Blackbird, which is really fast. If it's not, then we index it locally, which takes a minute if you have a large project. And then Harald, maybe you can talk more about that, because sending your whole project to the context window just isn't feasible.
I just for perspective on this from the kind of AI Studio as an interface as well, like if you do upload a significantly sized code base that hits up 600,000, 700,000 tokens, it is going to take a while for the model to analyze everything. So I see people most commonly use this for like the planning stages of, I have a migration, I want to take this code base and migrate it to the next version. Please help me build a plan for what would be required in order to accomplish this task. So it's but hopefully things will get faster over time, like as the models become better and better.
Don't feed the node modules. Exactly. It's exactly what you're trying to avoid.
Yeah. Maybe to explain how we do it. So if you click on the little Copilot icon in the lower right, you see down there in your status bar, right? There's a little popover. So that's where you get like your lowdown of everything GitHub Copilot knows. So this one has
we've got premium chat requests. And I also wanted to show, if you look here, you can see how many, I guess this is the multiplier here.
Yeah.
Right? So if you make a request in agent mode request, each of these is one request. Right.
Yeah,
so
and to be clear, this is super hot on insiders, right? So what you're showing is basically shipping in one week or so. No, 2 weeks, because next week is testing. So this is, want to try it out, the just freshly dropped agent model picker.
Yeah, this is really cool. I like this a lot because you can actually see this and know, because like 4.5 is 50x.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
On 01 and 03.
Yeah, I also quite like the there's some extensions that kind of price out how much each of the kind of component steps of an agent workload are. So it might be like a fraction of a penny or a full penny, and it's really nice to be able to have that granularity as well, to understand how much the tasks that you're doing are costing in the editor.
Right. People keep asking for that for Copilot, and it's interesting because it makes sense for other extensions where you put in your own keys, right? Because everything in the AI world costs per token.
Yeah.
And that's the multiplier for most people. But then the Copilot and other areas who pay per request. So I think that's why the people are very like the power users are very trained on thinking about tokens, but then for the general user base, it's just like, what is a token? How many tokens did it request you? It's like, and then do I use it wrong when it uses many tokens, or how do I optimize for tokens? Right? There's so many. It's a really hard problem to even think about tokens from a general end user perspective.
Right. And that's part of what we're trying to do with Copilot, right? Harald is kind of like abstract that away so that you don't have to think about that part. Because when you're having to do that math, although I think, again, this is like some people want a lot of control over that, and some people don't want to be bothered with it. I'm in the don't bother me with it, right? Like just figure it out. I don't want to have to worry about contexts, but I am worried about rate limits. And so I do want to know, if I'm going to use a model that's going to use 50, a 50 multiplier every time I use it, I want to know that. Maybe I'm not going to use that model then.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry,
I will say I do like knowing just kind of like a personal impact perspective on how much each one of the requests that I call ends up being, just because it gives me a lot of personal satisfaction to think like, oh wow, that would have taken me probably like 2 hours, and instead I got a model to do it for like a fraction of a penny. That's pretty it's pretty fulfilling.
That's very true. Again, I just think that we could do so much more to help people know when to use what model and what sort. Yeah,
totally. Yeah,
definitely.
That's definitely on like that model drop down was like the last comment I had about it. Should we add a search field to it?
Somebody who said that? Did somebody say that in chat?
Oh my god!
Because that's like, no, we're at the point, and like there's a lot of prior art there in this space already. That just auto pick, and I think right now my mental model is there's like reasoning, like big gnarly wicked problems, and you want the model to take something complex part. There might be just your dictations on what your product spec is, and then extracting out what the actual spec is. Might be looking through your complex class system to find out where the logic bug is. And the thinking models are great at that. And to make a plan or to figure out a bug, and then have a fast models like the super fast ones to just rewrite everything, right? Just it's not hard.
Yeah, it's easy work.
Or even like a local model, right? Like as the local models get better and better, outsourcing the really hard, complex things to maybe a server side model, and then relying more on something being local, like a llama variant or a Gemma variant, to do kind of the more lightweight, well specified tasks. Like the world is bright.
Yeah, this is so great. I mean, I think, chat, what you're going to see is a lot of this changing in the next 12 months. I mean, the next 12 days, right? Like, who knows where we're going to be 12 days from now? Maybe this list will double in 12 days. Who even knows?
Yeah.
But I think, so right now, Paige, like, what should people do to get started with Gemini in Copilot today? What do they need here?
So I think y'all are the ones who are best suited to talk about the paid Copilot features, and how if you are a paid tier Copilot user, you can start using the Gemini 2.5 Pro model in preview and agent mode today. And if folks are curious to experiment with the latest Gemini models, they can go to ai.dev, which is AI Studio, and generate an API key for free, start interacting with the models for free. And if they want to bring their own key to the free tier version of Copilot, they can do that via AI Studio.
Yep, right there. And then you can add your keys right there. Yep. And I'll tell you, chat, what I've been doing is I use 2.5 Pro in agent mode and edits, and I'm using Flash when I'm doing inline stuff, right? So if I'm in here and I'm like, I don't know, add a modal, right? Then you can just select it from here and Flash, because this is a simple job. This is where you want the speed. Really, really good for this stuff. So that's it. I know Harald's got places to be. Paige's certainly got places to be. I've got places to be, although they're not very important, quite boring. You would not be impressed at all. Not a very important person here. Thank you so much, Paige, for joining us to talk about Gemini.
Burke, you are very important to me and to all of the VS Code users, and so it was so good to see all of you. Like Harald, you're in the Bay Area, right, or nearby? We should hang out.
We should. With that background of there.
Yeah. You're too kind, Paige. I'll take it. Harald's never that nice to me, so I need it.
I will send you flowers.
Oh, all right, chat. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. If you managed to make this stream, you actually got to see a lot of new things that haven't even been talked about yet, which is great. You can do that with Insiders today. You can use 2.5 Pro in Insiders today. You can use Flash today. You can bring your own Gemini key today. All this stuff is usable today, y'all. We're not talking about stuff that's in the future. So thanks for being with us. Thank you, Paige. We'll have to have you back when a week from now when everything's changed.
Cool.
Yay. All right.
Excellent.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Thanks
Thank
much,
you.
Paige.
Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.